Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. So I've been collecting these little birdhouses from the Dollar Tree, and I think today I finally figured out what I want to make with them. So let's go have some fun.
To start, we're going to make a pool noodle wreath. So I have a green pool noodle here from the Dollar Tree, and it doesn't have to be green, but because this is going to be a green wreath, then if anything shows through, it shouldn't be too noticeable. And this one is a leftover pool noodle from St. Patrick's Day, so it's sort of a Kelly green. Now I'm going to use duct tape and a little bit of hot glue to form this into a circle. So I rip off a piece of duct tape that is large enough to go all the way around the two pieces of pool noodle. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue around the end, stick the two ends together, and then tightly wrap the duct tape around. Now we're going to cut a piece of pool noodle to bisect our pool noodle. So cut a piece that will fit in the middle. That's going to be around 14 inches. I tried to shape the ends so that it would fit perfectly in the pool noodle, but I don't think I was very successful. And you can see my pool noodle piece is sort of taped together. This is a piece of pool noodle that somebody had tried to use for something else, and so I'm just going to repurpose it here. It's fine that it's not perfect and it's all cut up. We're going to cover it. So I'm going to mix some regular white glue, school glue, PVA glue, with a little bit of water until it's just a little bit less viscous. And then I am going to apply the glue to the pool noodle piece for the middle, and then just put some regular white tissue paper over that. The first layer of this paper mache or decoupage, I'm not sure which it is going to be just a little bit of tissue paper. And I'm going to fold that over the ends a little bit. Now, while that's still wet, although it doesn't matter if you let it dry, I'm going to decoupage pieces of this grass hula skirt onto what is my faux tree trunk. And this is going to give it a nice sort of bark or grain. I'm thinking of more of a pole, like a fence post or something, or a pole that you might attach birdhouses to, but you could also go a little rougher with the texture and make it more like a tree. And I think that these pieces of grass skirt are perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open some of them up because these are folded over, but I'm going to leave some folded over, and I'm not going to have any particular pattern, just maybe put some that are folded over next to each other and some that are opened up next to each other. I just want to get the grain all going in one direction. So I'm going to lay some of my glue mixture down on the pool noodle, and then lay down a piece of this grass skirt, and then trim it at the ends and fold the ends over, and then apply glue over the whole thing. And I found this was easier to do with a paintbrush. I do have one special paintbrush that I use just for glue. Now, there were a few places where I had gaps between my rows of hula skirt, and I just cut smaller pieces and put them in the gaps. I just want everything to be going the same direction on this piece of pool noodle. So once you have it completely covered, then you just want to let that dry thoroughly. So while that is drying, I have these birdhouses from the Dollar Tree. Some of them are garden picks, and then the others are made of wood. And I decided that I would use the wooden ones, and I'm going to use 3 different styles here. And I would recommend sanding them. I didn't sand the first one, and I regretted that. They don't need a lot of sanding, so just a light sand, particularly over the edges of the wood. And I'm going to paint them in this home decor chalk paint in Adirondack white. But here is one place where you can really personalize this and make it your own and paint the houses whatever color you like. I felt like I really wanted a clean spring look for this wreath. Now, I painted the entire top of the birdhouse, and then once that had dried, I painted the bottom because you will be able to see the bottoms of these birdhouses, so they do need a complete coat of paint. And for 2 of them, I felt like there were a couple of places where I wanted to touch up the paint a little bit, so in some places these have 2 coats of paint. So while those are drying, let's cover our wreath form with some fabric. I have these 2 18 by 21 inch fabric pieces from the Dollar Tree that are green, and I'm actually going to use the solid green piece because I don't like it as much, and it's mostly going to get covered up. So the first thing I'm going to do is iron that. And now once that is ironed, I'm going to cut it into 3 pieces. Now, ideally, you would have at least 8 inches of fabric to go around one of these pool noodle wreaths. When I cut it in 3 pieces, I'm going to cut it along that, the 18-inch side. So in other words, I'm going to fold it into 3 pieces in the 21-inch direction. Then I'm going to have 3 pieces which are 7 inches wide. And that's not ideal. It's really not big enough. But this is a wreath that has a front and a back. So I'm going to do that. If you want this to look a little bit nicer in the back, you might invest in 2 pieces of fabric or buy maybe 1/4 yard of fabric at Joann's. Once I have my 3 pieces, I'm just going to pin them to the back of the wreath. So this is one of the wonderful features of a pool noodle wreath, is that you can pin things to it. So I'm just going to pin the center of the piece, so pull it around in the center, and then try to pin it around as best I can. This isn't a very stretchy fabric, and it has no pattern or texture to it, so it's not going to look good. Again, this is just basically a base, and it's mostly going to be covered up. So I'm just positioning those 3 pieces so that most of the wreath is covered. Now I have this 9-foot roll of ribbon. It's wired ribbon from the Dollar Tree, which is a darker green, or more of an olive green, and I'm going to wrap that all around the wreath. So I'm going to use the whole 9 feet, and it's not going to give complete coverage, but it's going to give me a little bit of coverage of the seams for the 3 pieces that I put on, and it's going to give me more of a sort of a forest look because I'm going to have those different shades of green. It also gives me a place where I can tuck greenery in to the wreath. And I'm just going to pin that at the start and the finish. Now, once your piece of pool noodle that's going to go in the middle of the wreath has completely dried, we're going to paint that with a faux wood effect. And the 2 colors that I'm going to use for this are this Apple Barrel Granite Gray and this Deco Art Americana acrylic paint in Burnt Umber. So for the first coat, mix a little bit of water in with the Granite Gray paint. Now, we don't want to get this too wet, but I don't want a really solid coverage. So what I'm doing is brushing that on and then dabbing it off with a paper towel because I don't want it to be too wet. But completely cover your pool noodle, and a little bit at the top and the bottom too, with that Granite Gray and water mixture. Let that thoroughly dry. And once that has dried, we're going to take the brown paint and dry brush it on. So get a little on your brush it off, and then brush it over the pool noodle. And because we did that decoupage with the hula skirt, it's got a lot of wonderful texture that you're going to pick up with the dry brushing. And I dry brushed in the direction of the grain, or in up and down. I thought that that was looking better than if I tried to go back and forth. With this, you can also make a few darker areas, sort of like knots, or just if you look at wood, sometimes there are areas that are darker. So do that sparingly, but mix in a few darker areas to make it look a little bit more realistic. And then once you have dry brushed over the entire piece, then you're going to add a lot of water to the burnt umber paint that's left, and then wash that over the entire piece. But don't do it for complete coverage. Leave like a few areas where a little bit of the gray is showing through. I developed this paint technique from some palette wood that I had, and it gives in my opinion, a really good natural look of wood. I'm really pleased with the way this one came out. Once that has dried completely, we're going to attach the birdhouses to it. So I thought I would try with wire and hot glue at first, and if that didn't work, I thought I would try some measures that were a little more sturdy. So what I did was I made loops out of this florist wire that I have, and I hot glued those to the back of the birdhouses. And then take a piece of silver florist wire. I got this at the Dollar Tree, or any color that you think will blend in with your wood, like maybe brown would work, and just wrap it completely around the pool noodle, so through that loop and around the pool noodle. And once you have them positioned where you like them, use some hot glue to attach the top and the bottom of the house to your faux wood. That will hold it in place and keep it from tipping forward or wrapping around the wood. Now, to attach the wood itself to the wreath, it does fit, or should fit, pretty well within the wreath, but what I did was I inserted some wire into the top and the bottom of it, and then I cut some holes in the ribbon and fabric that I had put around the wreath so that I could insert that wire down into the pool noodle. And when you're inserting wire into your faux wood, of course, there's a hole in the middle of the pool noodle, so you'll have to go more to the front or more to the back. I would say go more to the front because this the birdhouses make it stick out a lot, and you want to push it back further into the wreath. Now for foliage, here's another place where you could really personalize this. I used what I had on hand, which is foliage that I really love. So I used 4 pieces of this lamb's ear that I got at the Dollar Tree. And I used 2 of these sprays which have limes on them. They're called lime stem. And it wasn't the limes I liked so much as the leaves, which look like pear tree leaves to me. And I just felt like this was the sort of leaf that I wanted to have on this wreath. I want something that looks like it belongs near a birdhouse. So for me, this looked like that. And then I found 1 stem of these beautiful sort of greenish flowers at the Dollar Tree. They're daisies, but they have this lovely green color, and so these are going to go onto the wreath. I wish I had more. So I positioned these with the lamb's ear at the bottom, forming sort of a spray, and lamb's ear at the sort of the top, the side and the top, and the lime sprays between that. And at first I tried to use the entire stem because I don't like to cut these, but I ended up having to cut all of them. So I used my aviator shears to cut them because they are pretty tough stems. And I also, and I don't think this is on camera, did have to use some of the green florist's wire to hold them into place. So I tucked them into the ribbon, but they still flopped around. So I just wrapped around them with the green florist wire and fastened that in the back where they weren't sticking nicely to the wreath. And with the flowers, originally I tried putting them at the top, and that just wasn't working. So again, I cut all the flowers off, and this is off camera. It was while I was playing with it, trying to make it look better. I cut all of the flowers off of the stem, and I put 4 of them at the top, and then I put 1 on either side of the wreath, and they blend nicely in with the foliage because they're green. And so finally, I thought it probably needed a little ribbon at the bottom. And I have these different colors of ribbon that I considered. And 2 of them are from the Dollar Tree. There's a green burlap, and then there's that sort of olive green that I wrapped around the wreath originally. And then 2 are from Family Dollar. I got them after Easter for 50% off. So these rolls were 75 cents each. And there's a burlap ribbon, but it's a lighter burlap than the burlap ribbon I usually see at the Dollar Tree. And there's this sort of light, almost mint green. I thought that was too much of a contrast with my other green colors. So I ended up using the light burlap, and this is just my taste. I really like things pretty neutral, but if you're really good with color and brave with color, you might like to do this with completely different foliage and flowers and colors. So to make the bow for the bottom, I figured out how long I wanted the tail to be, and then I figured out how wide I wanted the bow to be, and I just folded it over on itself until I had a little bit more than a tail's worth left, and that's what I used to wrap around the bow. So I pinched the bow in the middle and then wrapped that last bit around, and then I used some florist wire through the back to hold it all together. So slide that through where I've wrapped the piece over, and then I just cut the little swallow's tail in each end of the ribbon, and I used the wire which I wrapped through the bow to hold it together to attach it to the bottom of the wreath. And here's the finished wreath. I think it's easier to see how it came out against this brown door, but I do love it against my mirror here.
So what did you think of our birdhouse wreath? I have to be honest, I really like it. I don't always like my crafts, but this one I really like. It's been hanging on my front door. I just took it down so that I could show you how I did end up attaching this pole in the middle to the actual wreath. So you can see that I have a little stick here, and that's on both sides. That's a bamboo skewer that I just poked through it, you know, with the sharp end and then cut it off. And I wrapped some florist wire around it and then attached it to the top. So that's basically hanging now. And I might attach it on the bottom too, but it's not really necessary. I do need to pull that up. I am really pleased that I ended up choosing this tan color for the ribbon because I feel like it relates the wreath to this pole in the middle. So that's gonna go back on my door. Well, that looks sad. There we go. So would you consider making this wreath? And if so, what sort of changes would you make? Would you use some colors for the birdhouses, and would you choose different colors for the foliage and the flowers around the wreath? Please tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your variations and your ideas. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.